Hello, buddy. I am Technovoid, and I am joined today by Hamsterwings. This is the final episode of Bug Fables. Welcome. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're going through the pit.
Yeah, so for those of you who are not sure what is going on screen right now, allow me to explain. This is the Cave of Trials in Bug Fables. It is essentially 50 levels of basically enemy encounters. At every 10th level, you get the ability to heal back up. If you so choose, but you only get that, 3 times total?
Yeah.
Something like that. And, I mean, you can take this on at basically any point in the game after Professor Neolith gives you the mysterious piece, but if you fight any enemies here before you fight them in the main story, they'll end up being, like silhouetted. Yeah, they'll end up being silhouetted, and you'll get less experience for them. So you can technically challenge this at any point in the game. I never challenged it at any point in my playthrough. I only am doing it right now, literally the very last thing. A lot of these fights early on end up being pretty simple, just because you're kind of meant to go through it at any point you want. You also get rewards every 10 levels. And usually towards the later levels, as we'll see here, even when there are really strong enemies, there generally is like one enemy, like a what are they called, flowerlings?
Yeah.
Or something. There's generally like one enemy that's like really easy to just continually just let live while you boost back up. So honestly, I was expecting that. I've never completed a pit of 100 trials in any of the Paper Mario games. I guess Super Paper Mario, but I don't really think that counts. So I was really nervous going into this. It ended up being pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about like our overall thoughts in the game also, right?
Yeah. I wanted to start off by just explaining what this is, and I guess this is a good segue.
I mean, that was a good segue. Like, this game is genuinely incredible, but one of the like very glaring problems with it is that it becomes incredibly easy after you beat Chapter 3.
Yeah. To just sort of get a little bit more into that, basically, you've played on hardest at this point, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I have not played on hardest. I've only played with the hard mode badge on, but what I can say from my playthrough is that the game starts out at a really good difficulty, and it maintains a really good difficulty, but then your characters end up becoming... They start outscaling the difficulty to the point where the enemies just couldn't have become hard enough in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, the game doesn't become easier, you just become so absurdly powerful.
Yeah, and I to some degree, I get that they needed to balance things around people who would have chosen HP and TP over and over, but medals in this game are just so powerful.
Yeah, and they're just not ramped up before Chapter 3.
Yeah, you really only start getting your crazy builds. Like we can talk about the poison Vi build. That does what? That can do like 40 damage per turn or something, or like 80 damage per turn if you double it.
Yeah, and then there's like Peril Leaf, which can do 200 damage in a turn.
Jesus. Yeah. And that's another thing about this game that, I mean, let's both preface this by saying we both really love this game. We think it's an amazing game.
Yeah, the thing is, we are critiquing this game as if it's a AAA game. It's not. It's incredible.
Yeah, no, it's really good. I mean, real quick, before we get into it, how do you compare this to the original 2 Paper Marios? Where do you put this on your list of in terms of enjoyment?
I don't know. That's really hard for me.
Fair.
Because I love all 3 of them so much, but the problem is that I played this game when I'm older, and I'm a lot more critical.
Yeah, that's fair. I think in large part, they have very different strengths. The games, like I think even though this game and the Paper Mario games are very similar in like soul, I think this succeeds on a lot of levels that those games don't. But then it has some failings.
Like going back to TTYD and like trying to turn relay, what the heck? It's not there.
Yeah, turn relay is such a great idea that ends up being so overpowered, because I think turn relay as a concept just makes it that the most effective use of a turn in any scenario or any team comp is to have one really, really strong character and have the other characters turn relay to that character and support that character.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like at the very beginning of the game, they introduced turn relay, and it's like, all right, why would I ever use this? It's always net negative. And then by the end of the game, you're like, why would I not turn relay literally every turn?
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Maybe turn relay could have been more balanced if it got. I don't want to say if it got worse, but like at the start of the game, when you do have that, like you do. What is it, one less damage or whatever, it doesn't make sense at the beginning of the game to use that. But as you get later, and as one character gets stacked with a bunch of medals, it becomes so broken. I'm just wondering if there was a way to make...
because like at the start of the game, I didn't like turn relay, because it's like, okay, well, this is just their way of making me this is just their way of forcing me to use different characters, because like, oh, this thing's flying.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this thing's underground. Oh, this thing has a shell, and there's like 3 of them, so Kabu needs to attack 3 times. But then by the end of the game, it's just like, no, this is just a tool for dealing 1,000 damage.
Yeah. I just wonder if there's some way they could have nerfed it further. Like, if you were to try and balance it out for the late game, what do you think you would do? Would you just make it the damage like even further drop off, or what would you? Do you think there's a good way to even deal with it?
I don't even know.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because this is the turn relay is like one of the things that makes me want to play this game more than the Paper Mario games, and it's just a shame that it is so broken.
It just makes the game too easy. I think I think the base game, like before Chapter 3, is just so hard, and then it just falls off because the badges scale up, and when the badges scale up, turn relay scales up.
Yeah.
So you're like double scaling.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to like the boss of Chapter 4, you can overpower it in like 2 turns. Like the boss of Chapter 4 is really cool. It's the only like unique boss in the game, because that's another problem I have with this game. It's like the most unique boss in the game, and you never see it because you can kill him in 2 turns.
Yeah. No, we can get into the bosses. Yeah, for turn relay, it's like you mentioned, it serves the double problem of making the game too easy, but it also makes the most effective builds the ones that focus on one character, because you can keep passing back to that character. So it's like when one character gets so many turns, like what I feel like it's sort of similar to Rallywink in like a Danger Mario run or whatever, where it's just your partners. I mean, your partners are less important in that, obviously, than this, where they're supposed to be like a team, but I feel like a similar issue where it's like, well, I just have one really strong character, why wouldn't I attack with it every single turn?
Yeah, especially when it's like free. Like Rallywink costs a bunch of FP.
Yeah, and this is just, oh, you do 1 less damage, which is fine because my Vi build does 50. What was your endgame build when you played through? On your original playthrough? Like, what was your...
original playthrough? I don't even remember anymore.
Okay.
It was some, like, crazy life cast build.
Nice.
Like, I was using life cast to deal damage, not to taunt.
Oh, okay. True.
Like, to keep myself in danger.
Makes sense. Okay, so I haven't played, obviously this was my first playthrough, this is the end of it, so I haven't played on any of the bonus modes. I would love for us at some point to, stream races of this game, but you have, what run have you done since you played your first playthrough? Like hardest, what else?
I did hardest, mystery at the same time.
Okay. What did you, what was your experience with hardest?
The game... Okay, well, I knew a lot more about the game before that point. But bosses like B33, but like Zasp and Mothova were incredibly hard.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And like, I just want to like say this. The game not being hard is not a bad thing. Like, the Paper Marios weren't hard.
Right.
But the fact that it like goes from being really challenging to really easy is just weird.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Like, we don't want to just knock this game because it's not difficult, but it's the beginning of the game gives you a taste of really what could have been.
Yeah.
Because, like, at the beginning, especially Chapter 3. I mean, Chapter 3 is, I think, in some ways, the golden, like, peak of this game. Because I sort of think that the story of this game and the difficulty of this game are, like
almost.
They're reversed, where the story progressively gets better and the interactions progressively get better, and the difficulty does literally the opposite thing. And there's this peak right in chapter 3 where the game is incredibly difficult and the story is picking up. And I just wish more of the game was like that. Like, I mean, it sort of rectifies a little bit in chapter 7 where it gets sort of tough again.
Yeah.
But just overall,
like, even like, I know this like bounty boss was buffed, but like I feel like a good example of this is False Monarch.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get to that boss and he hits you, you're like, oh my gosh, this boss does a lot of damage. But it doesn't matter because you kill him in 2 turns.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or by that point in the game, you have a Kabu that's literally unkillable.
Yeah, that's what happened in my case.
It doesn't matter if he's hitting like 6 damage 3 times per turn. Kabu's taking 1/1/1 and then healing it all off.
Yeah, I mean, even when I did and you haven't seen my fight with Team Maki and Team Slacker, but I can just say that even for me, they were tough and they were like a good challenge, but they were still just kind of trivialized by the fact that I just used taunt every turn.
Yeah,
and
I mean taunt is ridiculously strong.
It's like it's my own fault for using a move that trivializes it, but at the same point, since the game, what?
It's in the game.
Yeah, it's like, since the game is difficult and I am trying to beat the game with the most effective tactic available, I'm gonna use that.
And you weren't even using the most effective tactic available.
That's very true.
there's a build in this game where you click do nothing every turn with Kabu, and he can't die. You don't have to guard. You don't have to do anything. He can't die.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he can't die to Maki. He can't die to Slacker. He can't die to anything. You never have to upgrade HP. Never. And you click and do nothing every turn. And Kabu never dies. You put Miracle Matter on someone else. They burst, then die. Then Kabu just sits there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate. That being said, the 1.1, I think, that came out, you didn't start playing until after 1.1, but I started my playthrough before 1.1, and that added a lot of really great changes, so I'm really happy that happened. I'm really looking forward to seeing what these devs do next. I sort of compare this more to the original Paper Mario, so I feel like if there was a Bug Fables sequel, it could just really, really be something great, unless it was like Subnautica Below Zero. Please don't.
I mean, I really, really do like this game. I know, like, everything I've said has been negative, but
it's because the positive is implied, I think, to some degree. Like,
it's because we're all, like, to talk about these negatives, we're implying that this, like, $15 game is a AAA title.
Yeah,
it's being compared to AAA titles.
We're basically saying these are the only things wrong with the game, to some degree. Like, this is like, the dialogue is incredible. The combat feels really good. Even when it gets easy, it's like you feel smart when you play a turn right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, even though you are using, like, the most effective tactics available, like, some of those late game stuff, it can still be difficult. Like, Chapter 7 and some of the post game stuff, it can still be hard if you mess up a turn. Like, I had some scenarios, like against Team Maki or whatever, where I would misplay a turn. And even though it was so difficult for me to misplay a turn because I had such a brain-dead strategy, if I had a situation where I did misplay something, I would be in a bad spot, and suddenly 2 of my people would be dead, and I would need a way to get them back up without having Kabu die, and it was very difficult for my Kabu to die, but, yeah, I really like that beginning part of the game where the 3-party, and I know you said you didn't like this to some degree, but I liked having the 3-party members having to play together. I prefer that to just having Leaf and Kabu play purely support.
No, I'm fine with that. The thing that I don't like is, like, early on they're like, yeah, this is the only reason you would ever use turn relay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which it just isn't true.
Yeah. Yeah, if they introduced more badges early that encourage turn relay, but then, yeah, like you mentioned to me at some point, you thought it was weird that, the status relay isn't an early game badge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, I feel like I should just mention here where now I want to say coming up on 2/3 of the way through the pit. If you bring 4 tangy berries with you into the pit and you have them through the entire pit and you never eat them, you actually fight a secret boss at the end after floor 50. This was added in patch 1.1, and it gives you one of the menu codes, which we will see in a little bit. So now going into, I guess, let's talk about those chapter bosses, because you mentioned them earlier, and I know your thoughts on them, and I know I have similar thoughts, so let's talk about that.
Alright, so the obvious thing, again, to compare this game to is Paper Mario.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of chapter bosses, I am not a fan of the chapter bosses in Bug Fables.
Mm-hmm.
Every boss follows the same formula.
They feel like stat checks.
They have... It's not even that they're stat checks, it's that there's no uniqueness to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are some bosses that have uniqueness to them, like Monsieur Scarlet does, to some degree. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, like so. Yeah, a lot of the not a lot, but a good number of the mini bosses, like what's her face? Carmina has some.
Carmina,
Riz,
the bandit leader.
Oh yeah, Stothles, yeah.
But the chapter bosses do not. They all operate the same. You get them like halfway dead, and then they enter phase 2, get more attack twice per turn, and they're all the same.
Yeah. It's when I think of Paper Mario bosses, and you probably think of something different because you're more familiar with the first game, but like what immediately comes to mind for me is Macho Grubba.
The things that come to mind for me are like Macho Grubba and Huff and Puff.
Huff and Puff was the other one I was thinking, yeah. And like Huff and Puff has this really unique concept of like the releasing his babies when he gets hit and then eating them back up for health, and Macho Grubba has his Macho Grubba is kind of, in some ways, the default boss in this game, as you said, where like halfway through the fight,
it's weird.
He like gets things, but the problem is every boss is Macho Grubba.
Yeah, whereas like Huff and Puff, like you can play every turn in this game exactly the same. Huff and Puff, you absolutely will lose if you play it like a normal fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because he will just infinitely heal on you.
Yeah, and that being said, the bosses in this game are harder than Huff and Puff.
Yeah.
Huff and Puff's not difficult, but he's different.
But there's nothing you have to learn for each boss fight.
Yeah.
Like, there's a balance here. There's this game on one end where you have to learn absolutely nothing, which I would say is kind of bad. And then on the opposite end, you have something like Sticker Star, where it's like, you need this one specific item to beat a boss, and you could not possibly know what it is.
Yeah. No, I mean, going into
and like the two original Paper Marios are somewhere in the middle, where they're just really well made.
Yeah, it's you should be able to beat a boss your first time fighting that boss, but you need to in that time fighting them gain some understanding of how they operate.
Yeah.
And like Sticker Star does the opposite thing, where you can go into a boss and it can be literally unbeatable, whereas this game goes into a boss and you don't need to prepare anything. You can do the same thing against the beast that you do against Ultimax tank, and you'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is unfortunate. That being said, some of the side bosses I think are great, and B33 really shines out. What is your favorite boss in this game?
B33, even though it's the same as like every other chapter boss, it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do feel like, it's not hard for the wrong reasons. It's not. It's a good boss, but he does stat check you very hard.
Yeah, he does. What would you say your favorite boss in this game is?
I want to say, part of me wants to say the chapter 4 boss, but it's just not, because you can one-shot it.
Mm-hmm. I can say, from my personal experience, the two bosses I enjoyed the most were B33. B33 I really liked, and I also really liked Mother Chomper due to where I fought it in the story. That was a really fun boss. That was a boss that for me I needed to learn like how the chompers work when she spits them out, and that for me was really engaging and fun because I had to do it several times. So I really liked that boss.
I like Scarlet a lot, and I like Astolfes.
Mm-hmm. Astolfes felt easy to me.
He was easy, yeah, but at least he was unique.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we have like 2 fights left here, and then the boss. So we should be wrapping up pretty soon here. Do you have any sort of final opinions?
Just reiterating that this game is really good.
Yeah, if you like, and this is true. I mean, I bullied Vlinks into playing it too, and Vlinks is someone who hasn't really played the original Paper Marios, and he's actually just finishing it up now. Last we spoke like 2 nights ago, and he had gotten through half of chapter 6. He hadn't done Rubber Prison yet, and he was just talking about how much he really does love this game. And despite all the negative things we were saying, at the end of the day, this game is still good. If you like Paper Mario, if you like RPGs, this is the game for you. This is the game that we have been waiting for since Thousand Year Door.
The negative things we're saying are somewhat nitpicky, like in reality.
For sure, yeah. Actually, speaking of nitpicks, can I nitpick on the platforming? I don't think the platforming in this game is good.
It's awkward, yeah.
Yeah, a huge problem in whatchamacallit, Upper Snakemouth Lab. Such a great area, such great ambiance, amazing enemies, amazing lore, and then you just have the icicle jumping across the icicles, and it's not fun.
Yeah, the beamerang is awkward.
Yeah.
Super awkward.
Yeah, no, but these are all things that are, clearly due to the, some of the art is jank, some of the controls are jank, and it's a small studio.
It is, and this is like their first game.
This is their first game. I mean, if these folks made another game, and learned stuff from what succeeded and didn't succeed here, I have no doubt it would be amazing. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Moonsprout puts out next, because this game, I had such a good time with it.
If they make another game in like the Bug Fables universe, even if it's not a direct sequel, just like in the same universe, I think it's going to be like genuinely incredible.
Yeah, I think
not to say that this game isn't incredible.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is it. That is everything. So I've been Technovoid. This has been Hamsterwings, and we love this game, and we hope you play it. And goodbye.